Greetings, everyone. I'm Michael Boriskin, and I am standing in the studio of the National Historic Landmark home of our namesake, the legendary composer, Aaron Copland. And I'm so glad to welcome you to Cultivated Spaces 3.0. This is the virtual version of our Cultivate Emerging Composers Institute, an annual week-long all-scholarship creative workshop and mentoring program for gifted composers in the initial stages of their professional careers. Copland House is a singular creative center for American music whose programs uniquely embrace the entire artistic process, from creation and development to performance and preservation. And all of that, we would like to think, is reflected in Cultivate, which is a deep dive into the composition process, the business of being a composer, really honing a new piece, and engaging intensively with the performers who are literally on the front lines, better known as the stage, in introducing the work and bringing it to life. It's really about communicating and projecting the piece to listeners and essentially making these new pieces as good as they can possibly be, as many of our fellows over the years have noted. So let's now turn to today's featured composer fellow, Aiyana Braun, and her Cultivate piece called Impulse 2. Aiyana is going to start us off with some brief introductory remarks, and then we will hear music from Copland House's complete performance of the piece, its virtual premiere, after which Aiyana will return for a short conversation with Cultivate's director, Derek Bermel. So enjoy the performance, and I hope you will join us next week for another program in Cultivated Spaces 3.0.
Hello, my name is Aiyana Braun, and I'm the composer of Impulse 2. Both of my parents are professional dancers and choreographers, and so my introduction to music was very pulse-oriented. As I've grown older, I've become very fascinated with how one can cultivate a sense of movement in a sonic environment in which pulse is largely absent. And so in writing this work, I was interested in creating an amorphic, ethereal soundscape to be combated by very rhythmic and groove-driven music. I'm very grateful to Copland House for commissioning this piece, for it was a really wonderful week filled with lots of workshopping and musical discussion with some really fantastic people. Very grateful, and thank you very much. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, my name is Derek Bermel, and I'm the director of the Cultivate program at the Copland House. And we just heard Impulse 2 by Aiyana Braun. And Aiyana, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to see you again.
Yes, you too. And great to hear that piece again. And Impulse. So, you coming from this background of where you were really immersed in dance, and here you chose to have the pulse fight the non-pulse.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I think about a lot because my introduction to music was through dance. And for a long time, I didn't realize how it affected how I view music, specifically how pulse oriented or how attracted I was to that sense of pulse and that rhythmic drive. And a couple of years ago, I discovered the music of Eliane Radigue and was just completely mesmerized. And it was just this incredible organic music that had this sense of movement, which was incredibly compelling to me, yet had an absence of pulse, or at least the traditional pulse that we think about in the Western canon. And so what's now interesting to me is the reconciliation between these two emotional states, because I realize that I'm incredibly moved by both. And so, how do they relate to each other is something that I'm continuing to ask myself when writing.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. I was just wondering whether some of that is because Radigue came from electronic music background, so that she wasn't thinking about the kinds of templates that we often put in front of us, whether that's on paper, like bars of music, or it's on the computer that spits out a template and then you're just writing in a groove. Um, and so either one of those ways, you end up trapped in the bar line. And maybe in her music, there was a kind of freedom that came from not taking that as a point of orientation. Of course, you can write electronic music that's separated into bar lines with grooves, and I suppose your music a little bit draws off pop music. I mean, if there's anything, I hear that kind of sound in it as well.
Interesting. That's funny. I like that.
I almost
It's
heard this like metal kind of sound at times, like the instruments were
awesome.
using extended technique. Well, you had that progression, that chord progression kind of that descends, da da da. It's very
Yeah,
rock and roll, kind of like
yeah.
you
I
know.
think the insistence too of the piano and kind of the nature of that material, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting you talk about the lack of that grid, because that is something that really attracts me. One thinking about Pulse or the absence of it, but the other thing about Eliane Radigue's music is like the timbral language she works in. And now that she has graduated from sort of the electronic music world and is bringing her philosophy to writing acoustic music, which for me is some of the most amazing music I've heard. But what really moves me too about her process is that the people she works with is integral to the timbral language of the music that she writes. It's about the community and the humanity. And I think that that's also something which is incredibly present in the music. And I know she talks about these sort of soundscapes as perceptual mechanisms. It's like a mirror of ourselves in a way, if we choose to engage with it as such. And so I like that idea because I think the sense of a grid and a rhythmic pulse is there's more of a specific way we are tuned to listen. And I think that I'm very attracted to these soundscapes where we're not necessarily sure how to listen through it. And so we're able to sort of have this engaging experience, different experience. Yes, and so it's trying to play around with all those different things.
Um, but yeah, speaking of extended techniques, so there's a lot of that in this piece. I mean,
Yeah,
you pretty much ran the gamut. I mean, from you started right off with the cellos playing quarter tones, and then you've got flutter tongue. I heard in the clarinet, a lot of harmonics in the violin at different times. These kind of heavy vibrato in the violin. That's what gave me the heavy metal feeling. But scratch tones.
yeah,
The cello's doing that Collegno battuto at times, and glissandi later
totally.
on, kind of epic squeal you get up to there. And so there's a lot of different techniques, but they all kind of merge to form
Mm.
this soundscape that you've created.
Thanks. Yeah, and the prepared piano as well, which was really fun. It's
Tell us
interesting.
about that. What because
Sure.
a lot of people won't know what prepared piano is, or for those that do, they are curious how you prepared it.
Absolutely. So prepared piano is what it sounds like, where you place devices inside the instrument on the string or what have you to basically just create a variation of the sound. And so I put a lot of mounting putty on various notes to create this harmonic fuzziness. And it's interesting too, because there is this pretty straightforward, simple like chord progression, as you were mentioning. But I was interested specifically in the preparations in the piano to have the quality of the sounds itself be fuzzy and sort of kind of lean into that as a harmonic device as well, or to consider to think about. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I really love extended techniques and just sort of the grit that it can bring. And yeah, just sort of confusing the musical language a little bit or playing around with it is something I'm interested in. And so I enjoy those parameters to play with as well.
Well, and these players also, they're very adept at extended techniques. What was your experience working for the week, working with them?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. They're so incredible, but also the nature of the discussion that we had was so open and it was just so heartening that whole week. And yeah, they really leaned into it. They're like, how scratchy do you want this? And it's just such a joy. Yeah, as
Went
a
through some
composer.
transformations.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, that's the idea is for the players to get to offer some suggestions and ideas
Yeah,
as the piece progresses through the week, and they get bolder with their suggestions, and sometimes you have
yeah,
to push back, but they are really terrific, those four players. So as you can see on
absolutely.
that, they play with a lot of commitment.
It's so fascinating too because you can tell that they're really well versed in new music as well because their comments too were really insightful compositionally. They were thinking about it from many different angles.
Hmm.
And so you could tell that, or at least I imagine it's because of the different types of musics that they've played for Copland House and for everything else. It's just really shows in the type of conversation that we were able to have and really added to this environment that was just really, it's about creating the best music that we can, but also making it an open and engaging discussion. And it's really gratifying and I'm very appreciative.
Well, that's great. I can't wait to see what you do next. And thanks so much for being part of Cultivate and participating and being a trooper for the week. And I loved hearing your piece again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have been a part of this and so good to see you.
And I want to say thanks also to I Care If You Listen and to American Composers Forum, who are our media sponsors, I believe they're called. So thanks again to both of them for being part of this, and look forward to the next your next compositions, hearing what comes next.
Thank you.